Welcome, everyone, to our first debut show of the Transitioning. My name is Bob Wright, and you'll probably remember me from the Collective Imagination. Welcome, everyone. I'm here with Julien Wells. Julien, are you there?
I'm here. Hello.
Yes.
Hello, everybody listening.
Yes, great to be on our first show.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I think a lot has been happening over the past month or couple months. And there's plenty we can talk about, and there's plenty of experiences people have had. And I think this show is really just about, feeling out what's been going on outside and within, and with each other.
Yeah, when Julien asked me to come on the show, I was really excited because getting on the show with Julien, we get to talk about any subject, no matter how off the wall. So we encourage everyone to call in if you have questions or if you want to chat or say hi. The call-in number is 646-716-4598, or if you have Skype, you can hit the Skype button at the top of the screen. And for those of you who are in the chat room, everybody welcome. I see a bunch of people that I'm familiar with, Ambiflex, Annie444. We will try to, if you have any questions you don't want to call in, you can type it in the chat. We'll try to get to them. Or else you can call in and you can, if you're brave enough, you can talk to us live, which we also appreciate very much.
I'm going to give a shout-out to my brother Matthew that's in the chat room. He and I also have kind of off-the-wall chats. I think, you and I have had pretty off-the-wall chats in the past, too. And I figure, we're at a good place where we can even start sharing those with others. Things like human technology, what we're capable of, what are the limits of our, realities, and, what we're discovering day by day.
Yeah, and there's an awful lot to talk about. Awful lot to talk about. Oh, and by the way, Julien, I just wanted to say on the air, kudos on the Blog Talk poster.
The graphic. Yeah.
That was all Julien, by the way, guys. You unbelievable, awesome. And yeah, just a joke, but it looked really cool.
Yeah, I was just having fun. Just for the record, we're not assuming we're like a Neo and Morpheus, but it feels kind of cool to feel a bit superhero-ish sometimes. And all for, having fun. That's really, what gets me to do anything these days. I don't think I do anything that don't have my heart into having the fun in the moment. So, there was a point in the past where I was a little bit hesitant to come on the air and things like this. And, but a nervousness. I'm a pretty, I'm introverted type of individual if you can't tell yet. But, just kind of shy and not wanting to, be in a position where I'm in some kind of limelight or when people feel like they're holding on to every word that I say. So it took some time for me to open up and just sort of realize that as long as I'm having fun, I think everybody will have fun.
Yeah, I agree. And Julien, I've watched over the last couple months listening to your interviews with Chris, and some really, really good stuff. So I'm glad that you finally got the nerve and are out there now on the air with everybody, because there's a lot to share.
Well, I think you're a little bit like me. Like, if someone's going to ask a question and we have something to offer, we feel quite free to do so. I'm just moving into this realm where, I'm speaking to people I don't even know who they are, but I'm feeling more and more comfortable with that as I realize that everyone really is my brother and sister. So it's really like whatever conversation we want to have, it's like I can have it knowing that this other person, I can love them and have the respect for them just as I have for my own brothers and sisters. Now,
I'm assuming that most of the people who are tuning in and listening to this show are somewhere in the stage of awakening, and some portion, well, everybody is kind of somewhere in the stage of transitioning if you're still here. But for those of you who are in this new awareness, and you want to talk about some of your experiences, this is the opportunity, or if you have questions, to find out, am I crazy? Because one of the real hard things to do, just like you said, Julien, is once you become aware of some of the new reality that you start to experience, and you start to realize some of the truth of what reality really is, you try to explain that to your friends or your family, and they're going to look at you like you have a third eye sometimes. And this is a place that you can come and nobody's going to look at you or talk about you that way, so feel free and feel comfortable. And for any of you who are calling in and listening, if you have a question, if you hit the number 1 key, it will notify me that your hand is raised and we'll try and get to you. Otherwise, I'll assume that you're just there listening. So if you have a question, hit the number 1 on the dial pad, and that will let me know that you want to talk or you have something to say.
Well, I did want to introduce why we're calling this the transitioning, and you kind of started there on the subject. And although it's probably not something I can answer really quickly, it's really something that came into my head. I was wondering what kind of title this show could be, and that just kept returning and telling me, no, this is really a really round way of explaining, how I feel in these days, and how I can offer to others who are exploring, this new wave of consciousness and new experiencing of reality. So the transitioning is a little bit like, what the poster's pointing out with the Matrix, where someone's going down the rabbit hole, discovering how things are not really what they are, and seeing their power within it. Because more and more, it's not that you're walking into a world of fantasy where you become more and more powerless to your surroundings. It's actually a circumstance where the real transitioning is about you gaining more and more empowerment through the experience. It's really kind of the purpose for the going down the rabbit hole is actually for yourself. It's not for you to lead someone else down the rabbit hole. It's not for you to, get rich. It's not for you to go down and, think you've got all the answers. It's really just, the path of exploring everything that you are a part of, because if you weren't a part of it, you wouldn't be experiencing it. So it's a kind of validation about our journeys as well. And so that's why everything really is on the table, because when we say, what is a table? It's everything. Everything that you can conceive of in your awakened state is your reality, and therefore it is valid. And I think we can, help shed light based on our experiences, how we see that to be true, and in everyone's case, not just our own. I don't want to get into, tirades of prophecies and all this, even though people ask me what I see coming forward and whatnot, because it's really a lot more of your choice for what it's going to be. It's like, is there a predetermined destiny? Well, the predetermined destiny is only what you've established before this moment in terms of your collective intent and drawing toward your experience. After that, you can rewrite it whenever you're ready. And,
and that's one of the things that I think, a lot of people, they ask questions, what's going to happen in the future, as if it is predetermined. But the only thing really that's predetermined is, yes, we are entering into this new energy. So now that you have all of this new energy, what are you going to do with it? You have all of these new tools available, all this new awareness, new knowledge, new understanding. What are you going to do with it? And that will be your future. You get to choose. And this is one of the things that I think is really, really exciting for me about the future is we get to choose. This is the time that we get to literally create our own heaven on earth.
Yeah, I think some people don't think that's possible.
Well, that's what we're here for. That's what we're going to talk about. Because there's a lot of things that now, Julien, you're kind of new in discovering the energetic world.
Mm-hmm.
And have very adapted to it like a duck to water, because it's something that's natural and inherent in everybody. And so, maybe a year ago, there's a lot of things that, you might not have thought were possible or even existed, as you do now. But like you said, it's the experience. I one of my favorite movies is Contact.
Oh, yeah.
And in that movie where she's on trial in front of the whole jury about her experience and, what did we waste all this money for,
right.
Basically. And they started quoting, empirical theory and law and Occam's razor, and isn't it possible that, none of this really happened? And she says, yes, I have to admit it's possible, except I can't deny the experience.
Mm-hmm.
I experienced something, and the experience was real. And when you start to experience some of these things, and a lot of people are starting to, it starts off with the strange coincidences that happen. That things that really just can't be denied. Things,
unbelievable synchronicities,
yeah, that start to make you question, that start to ask you questions, to make you think in a different way than possibly you thought before. Maybe things are working, with me. Maybe I am having an influence, and once you start asking those questions, then the coincidences just go crazy.
Yeah.
The synchronicities just go crazy.
Well, you actually think you're going crazy.
Yeah,
you're like, am I living in a movie where this script is just so unbelievable, as movies tend to be scripted for the fantastic, And it's like, how is this possible? And I know some people have experiences with, I think, I'm just going to call them lighter realities, such as, when you're dreaming or when you have meditative experiences. It doesn't seem real because, it's only in the field of your awareness, whether your eyes are closed or in a place where, physically you didn't involve your hands or your body in it. So you're wondering, how real is that? How real is the material in your head? And a lot of people get challenged by those kinds of questions because we don't play out a lot of validation of what goes on in our heads in everyday life. But, if you take a look at our world as it is right now, our society as it is right now, it wouldn't exist if it wasn't thought up. That's a simple fact, that what comes out of your brain does have a place in reality. It's just up to us to determine if we want it to fit in or not.
Right. You can't have a material world without thought coming into it first. It just can't happen.
Yeah. I think some people get caught up on, I need to, develop my spirituality, or, I need to meditate a lot, or, I'm not going to gain any real good insight until I've done all this internal work. And I'm going to say that's not true. I'm going to say there is a certain amount of work, and that work that we're talking to with regards to paying attention to what's going on inside you, it's just enough time to pay attention to it. That's really how much effort you're going to require, which is just some, self-contemplative, states of mind. It's not like in meditating for 10 minutes. It can be for 30 seconds. What am I really feeling in this moment? And there you go. You didn't need to be a guru. You didn't need to be a swami. You didn't need to be anybody special to know how you're feeling and thinking in that moment.
Right. And it's not about, there's nothing real special that you really need to learn, because really it's inherent in you. Nobody, when you were born, nobody needed to teach you how to breathe. Nobody needed to teach you, how to go to the bathroom or do all of the natural things that you do. And in a similar fashion, nobody needs to teach you how to be spiritual. Being spiritual is just something that you are. It's by nature. You're a spiritual being. And thus you have spiritual qualities and aspects in your experiential life that just is there. And, we are the ones who pile on a whole bunch of stuff on top of that. We hide our light. We make ourselves small. And Lisa had a dream, where she saw herself in her original form and watched time pass as layers and layers were like a transparency. Layers were put on this original form. And in her original form, she was huge and she had wings and she was beautiful. And then the first layer came on and the wings disappeared. And the next layer and she was smaller. And the next and we pile all these limitations as layers on top of us. We can't do this, we can't do that, and you can't do this, and you can't know that, and you can't understand. And to the point where we start to make comments, I'm only human.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a real serious limitation right there. I know it's a truth, it's a factual statement, but when you lay down facts like this, you're really grounding yourself into that limitation.
Right. And it's one of the, just to make this really, really simple, it's your belief. If you can fashion a belief in your mind and make it work, well, that connection in your head is going to play out on your external life. It just works that way. And I talk about this on a lot of the other shows. I had a real serious problem growing up. I was the pudgy little black kid. Because and I couldn't understand, I have a brother, come from the same family. He is skinny as a rail, eats like a horse. And I kid you not. I mean, literally, he'll have 3-4 plates of food, and never gains a pound. And I would watch my weight and diet and never change. Well, it's just genetics. Well, I discovered it really wasn't genetics. I just needed to change what I believed about the food that I was eating. And once once you change your belief, and that's probably one of the hardest things that people, come across, because they believe what they see on the outside before they believe what they feel on the in. I see this so often, in especially in religion. When I spent some time in Egypt, there was 2 boys that were actually executed by their family. They were poisoned to death because they were caught in bed together, and homosexuality is a major haram. Haram in Arabic means great sin, and the woman was sitting and crying and wailing, after she had just poisoned her son, and I asked her, I was like, why? Why? And she's like, haram. The Quran clearly says da 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 da. And I says, yes, but what does your heart say now? I says, God was speaking to you not through the book, but through your heart, and your heart is broken. And the people so quick to disown the feeling, the experience that they are feeling of God, and they want to own the words, what's on the outside, what's being told to them, what's being written. They disown their feelings and they hold on to what's on the external, and deny themselves what they're literally feeling inside. And you have a fail-proof bullshit meter inside you. Fail-proof.
How well do you use it, I guess?
Well, first off, you have to know that it's there, or even believe that it's there.
Right.
But it is there. And your heart will tell you exactly and lead you exactly to the experiences that you need or that you desire when you're tuned into it.
Yeah, I think if you want to talk about the control scheme that's been going on in the background, powers at work, Kabbalah, whatever, I think they're trying to establish what should be the rules for reality and the parameters that they want to live within. And, we give our rights over to them, and we become grounded in their rules. And when I say grounded really means, things like your beliefs and what you assume should be the routine that you go through day to day. And, we give those over to someone else, and by doing that, we're no longer grounded in the truths that we have within ourselves. That comes clearly from the heart. There's so many things, especially killing. It's like, is there ever a true reason to kill someone? From within, does anyone ever feel that is valid? And, right there you can see how there's no need to hold on to these rules that are established outside yourself if they're in contrast to where you come from. Now, obviously, people have lots of emotions, that are in contrast to each other, so we're not going to pretend that everyone's heart is in the same place about everything. But to just announce that there's a broad stroke that everyone should apply to themselves is a fairly scary notion, because then you ask, who's making the broad strokes?
Yeah. And what's their agenda behind it?
Well, their agenda, if they know that they're doing what they're doing, is to strengthen their reality, because we all co-create a reality. I'm pretty sure everyone on the board here and listening will understand that we co-create a reality. Even though we create a reality, we co-create a reality. By ourselves, creating our reality, I've found out, can be very lonely, because you can create all sorts of fantastic things, but then you start to not realize what is there for you to discover. It's like we look into other people's lives to see what we can go and explore. And so it's one of the reasons why we live with Gaia, because Gaia has offered so much to explore. We co-create with Gaia. And under the conditions of Gaia, we have a very large range of experiences we can experience. So, we could live in nature and not with a single other soul and have a wonderful life, because Gaia is a really great companion. But what we've done in this time and age is we've also invited relationships with other individuals with the same levels of potentials. Gaia is like a mother. Sort of fosters its children and fosters and offers the space for our development and for our experiences. But when we want to get into expanding beyond that, we want to look into contrasts that Gaia is not necessarily willing to offer, or that we're not willing to find within Gaia's scope. And so we find other people, and we co-create with them, and we also co-create, fear as much as we'd co-create love. In those places, we come up with all sorts of experiences we can have. And, none is more right than the other. Only that it's up to you. The only thing that's right is that you should, understand that you have the power over your experience. Because ultimately, if you don't want to experience co-creation because you think it's ugly with other people, then you don't have to. And if you don't like what the Earth has to offer, well, then you really wouldn't be here on Earth. And so I will speak to our relationship with Gaia and with each other, because we wouldn't be here talking in this space and time if they weren't things that we were interested in.
Right. It's for me it was I made a big turn, I think, in getting past all of that. Getting caught up in other people's realities, and I think when I realized that, I think it was the double slit experiment that I watched, and I started looking into quantum theory, and I started to realize that, wait a second, if at the quantum level, right, it works this way and everything is made from those subatomic particles, then it's got to work that way all across the board. And as I started to think about it and process it, because we're at a point right now where belief is no longer necessary. It really isn't. We're at a point in our technology and in our science where our science can literally verify, quantitatively verify what the spiritual masters and gurus have been saying all along. It's not an esoteric thing anymore. We're talking about scientific fact. You create reality. That's a fact. There's no debate in it. There's no getting around it. It's at this point, it's a fact. It's available. It's there. It's provable, and you can either accept it or not. Either way, you're still creating your own reality, and it's different from everyone else's. I mean, just by your sense of taste will tell you that your reality is different because things don't taste the same to you as they do to everyone else. Otherwise, everybody would like the exact same foods. Everyone would like the exact same colors. Everyone would like the exact same sounds and music. But it's not that way because we interpret those things differently. Each of us are interpreting those things differently. The color green that I see and the color green that Julien sees, or what he calls green, I guarantee are two completely different colors. In our perception, the way that we perceive them, the way that we look at them, but energetically, it's still the same thing. It's just the way that we are translating that energetic pattern through our senses. So once you get past, reality being fixed and solid, and once you get past that whole idea that, we're in this whole static environment, that it's not static at all, it's extremely malleable and very, very accessible through your heart, then you start really having fun.
Yeah, it's very much in flux. I know a couple of people here might already be aware that I perceive energy and energy patterns. Well, anybody can do the sorts of things that I seem to be able to do, and we already are through our regular five senses. I see things, smell things, touch things, whatnot. But when, our mind takes in that data, we interpret what they are. I'm looking at these heart-shaped emoticons in the chat room. What is that? Does that mean love, or does that mean, the physical heart within the chest? Does that mean, a kiss? I mean, what does it mean? Can it be yellow? Does it always have to be red? It's sort of like, what does that pattern mean to you? And what I'm finding out is that there's all these patterns around everything being held into physicality, sort of like the inherent intent of an object, right? And I'm finding out that these energies actually have their own personal identification. I don't want to say egos, but they actually have a certain amount of personality. Like even the door that you use to exit and enter your home has its own personality. Your teddy bear has its own personality.
Oh, well, you know what? You can do that, like with your house.
Yeah.
Or certain locations. Like I have gone into certain houses and certain homes, and there's a definite personality, a definite feeling or sense that you get from the house itself. You know? And I believe everybody's kind of felt and some houses just really like you're in there and you can feel the hair on your arms stand up, you get that eerie feeling. Or some houses just really kind of welcome you in, and it feels warm and cozy. And it's not so much the decor, although that can add to it, but it's the presence and the energy within the walls, within the wood, within the structure itself. And you literally can tune into it, If you've ever walked into a room where people have been fighting, you're coming from a peaceful place, you feel it. Oh God, attention's so thick I can cut it with a knife. You can feel
like a brick wall.
Yeah. And no one has to tell you that something's wrong. No one has to. You feel it, and when you start tuning into those feelings and those subtle hunches, that voice in the back of the head that tells you, no, you probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And then you always, and then after you do it, and then you get bit in the ass for whatever it is that you did. It's like, I should have listened to myself. When I had that feeling, I had a feeling, and you didn't listen to it. Everybody has that story,
Yeah.
Of the feeling that they didn't listen to, and what happened thereafter. And
it's data, but we don't tend to acknowledge it in our day-to-day lives because it actually stands in contrast to the rules that we have agreed to all around us, the belief structures of others that we've incorporated.
Well, this is the reason I've discovered, and I honestly think that this is the reason why there's so many wars around belief. Most wars are religiously motivated, and when you talk about religion, you're talking about organized systems of belief. And what you believe creates your reality. So people have a vested interest in creating a certain reality. And when beliefs change, people will kill and fight wars over beliefs, because when a belief changes, reality changes.
Yeah, actual reality.
Actual reality.
That's why people actually believe in their religions. Mm-hmm. They actually have experiences that people outside the religions can't conceive of.
Right.
People actually meeting God, people actually seeing saints, people actually seeing, different
their saviors and religious, heroes. Yeah.
And it's really comes down a lot to what we're inviting to our reality. I want to sort of bring it back to this. If you give your choice over your reality to someone else to say so by you agreeing to what they're bringing forth as what should be, well, then what you're doing is you're grounding that belief into your reality. It is now part of yours. And, I would say you better know what you're getting into before you agree to anything, because at some levels it's kind of a contract. I don't want to say you put your thumbprint down or you've signed your name to it, but when you ground something into it, your subconscious holds on to that. It gets imprinted and saved in the hard drive of your body to remind you when you wake up that you're going to continue to experience that belief you heard of yesterday. But take note of what you accept, and take note that you can let go as well. Let going is a bit harder, and I think people are just beginning to discover the potentials of letting go too, because that's a bit what the transitioning is about.
Yeah, that letting go is it's not it's easier said than done.
Of course, yeah.
Especially when you have so much time and energy invested in your form of belief system, or this is what my grandfather or my mother or whoever was, the person that you looked up to, to get truth from. You feel like, well, I'm portraying, I've always been Catholic, it's part of my heritage, and to challenge, your traditions, to challenge your accepted beliefs, to challenge, what you've been taught and what you've learned and accepted to be true. It's difficult because people invest a lot of time and energy in being right.
Mhm. They do, and they put a lot of. You can even say education is a lot about educating yourself on what the consensus is of what right is. Right.
And nobody wants to be wrong. Nobody.
No, of course.
But it's a requirement for growth. To be able to say that everything that I thought was right is wrong, let me start over again, that takes courage. It takes courage, and it takes a certain level of help me here.
Well, it's actually balls. I had to say because you're facing getting kicked in the balls by the person saying, "How dare you?" Really? Because what you're doing by separating yourself from that person in a particular way, they will assume that you're separating yourself from that person in many ways and sort of spitting on their beliefs. Because many people believe that truth is a common thing, that everyone should have the same beliefs. Everybody seems to assume around us that beliefs are a universal thing, that everyone should hold universal truths.
Or that truth is objective.
Right. And the moment that you step outside of what is someone else's truth, it's like you're betraying the co-creation that you've established between each other.
Yeah.
So it can be quite vicious, the experience when, you put yourself in contrast to someone else's.
Well, that's what is so really amazing about experience, because the universe will allow you to experience someone else's reality, if you're open to it, And I remember when I was like 4 years old, and my great-great-grandfather, who was a shaman, he was a medicine man of the Lakota tribe, and in my reality and his reality were two different realities. And when I stepped into his reality, wild birds would land and light on his shoulder. He would feed them from his hands. Deer would come out of the woods, and literally, like, he would just pet them like they were domesticated. That was not part of my reality, but when I experienced it, I couldn't deny that it wasn't happening. And then you start asking, how do you do that?
Yeah.
And as most children, are very, very open. They're ready to accept and believe just about anything. And in that state of mind, that's why children see so much more. They see their dead cousins and aunts and great uncles, and they see a lot of reality because they haven't been trained yet not to.
Yeah, they go with the establishment until the establishment says no. That person is right there below that gravestone. They're nowhere else.
Right.
And then they don't. Then they say, okay, well then that must have been some kind of imagination. And then you say, how valid is that imagination?
Well, they're chastised, and they're made to feel as though that there's something wrong with them. They're made to feel as though that they're abnormal. And like I said, nobody wants to be wrong. Nobody wants to be quote unquote abnormal or aberrant or to be different. People inherently they want to fit in. They want to be accepted. And so, they carry around this feeling that there's something wrong with me, and people are doing this, with labeling kids as ADHD or attention deficit, and pointing fingers at the child as though that their evolution, because their minds work now, children's minds they work more in a quantum way. They're not very linear. They're used to doing 4 or 5 things at the same time. That's why they can navigate the internet so much faster than their parents.
Yeah, I noticed.
And their point, society will point the finger and say, the problem is yours because you've got attention deficit. You can't sit in a class and listen to some teacher spit out some irrelevant nonsense that you recognize as irrelevant. Because you can't sit there and endure it, then there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
And you need to be medicated. Those things, those impressions, those pains that you endure as you're growing up, they get branded in your subconscious. And part of that releasing is to go back to those initial pains, those initial things, because they cause blockages. You know, your subconscious mind will literally cut that off. Say, hey, no, this causes me pain. I'm going to stop this signal from going to your consciousness right here.
Yeah.
And it will do that. So, you know, in the releasing, a lot of times we have to go back to some painful areas, some pain, and this makes it difficult because a lot of people don't want to revisit their pain or revisit their trauma or revisit their anger or whatever it is that causes these blockages.
You need to identify with the pain of that experience.
Yes. But
that's where you got to have courage, right?
Exactly. And so, you know, it's a journey. It really is. It's a journey, just like, you know, taking a journey around the world. It is a journey, and there's a lot of things about yourself that you'll discover. And when you have that intent that that's what you want to do and that's the path you want to take, and you start on that journey, the initial, you know, trepidation and fear, once you get past that, on the other side, there's this feeling of liberation, of freedom, freedom of expression, of, you know, because you're no longer bound by what other people think or say, or, you know, you're not looking for validation anymore outside of yourself. You feel free to express yourself as yourself, and you do it. And some of the people who are like that, we call them free spirits. You know, they come into your life, and it's magical. There are magical people walking on the earth. Why? You know, they walk in, and all of a sudden, everything around them just kind of like happens in their favor. You know some of these magical people, and you are one of them. You could be one of them if you choose to be.
I mean, you know, you're speaking to everything that I'm feeling and that I've been growing up through over the past couple of years, especially. And some people will call it, you know, questioning the establishment, I think. And you know, it's a hard deal to advance in that direction. You know, questioning the establishment, because you're wondering, what is the value of conforming? Well, anything can be considered conforming if you do it long enough, because you're grounding it into your experience. So you can say you need to conform to your parents' rules. So you conform to, you know, the establishment's rules. You know, always drive on the right side of the road. You know, always say please and thank you. You know, all these things. Sure, many of them have good foundations of why they exist, but, you know, take each one at a time and say, in each individual space, how does it apply? How much importance does it hold on my expressing, you know, who I am? Is this a limit in this space, or is it not a limit in this space? So for me, it's like, sure, I'll conform to driving on the right side of the road. I can see how that's helpful. You know, it establishes some parameters with me and the other individuals that I don't, you know, wish to have a one-to-one discussion every time they want to pass me or something on the street. You know, there's good grounding principles. And, you know, it comes down to, what do we ground into ourselves, and what can we let go after its usefulness has been served? You know, and there's a lot of educating children early in their life. When they go to school, that's all that is establishing the grounding of parameters for how they should fit into culture. It's the culture and society of their circumstance that is determining what they should live within. What are the boundaries of the culture and society that they're being trained to obey, and what sort of things are we willing for our children to understand? And if we say that this is all there is to understand, and we're teaching them something like science or whatever, well, then that's all they're going to think there is. And, you know, it'll only be those few that are willing to break the establishment that'll go past what the sciences have offered and past, what your math teacher can teach you.
In most advanced civilizations, and if you are one of those who've ever encountered any of the galactic civilizations, and when I say advanced, I say sustainable civilizations, because ours is not, and we barely call ourselves a civilization because we're really not sustainable. But in most of those civilizations you'll encounter, it's the children. They look to the children for the advancement of themselves, because the children, when their children come in, they're not tainted by a lot of the conditioning. They're not tainted by a lot of the programming that inherently comes with living in any sort of communal or social setting or common co-creation. And so they are, and even in humans, when you test children for creativity, 98% of all kindergartens test well above genius. 98%
I wasn't aware of
that. Of all kindergartens, when they test for creative genius, 98% of them test above genius. You take that same group, and in 12th grade, that number will drop to lower than 1%. What happened to these kids that were geniuses just 10 years before? And it's the education process. That's what happened to them. That's what happened to them, and it happens to all of us. If you're going, unless you are consciously aware of what's going on and you're consciously aware of what you're accepting. And these are, as in the chat room, these are the kids that are quote unquote labeled as the trouble kids. These are the children that are the system busters. They'll point out to you immediately in an advanced civilization, that child would be listened to, and the curriculum would be formed around their needs and not forced down their throat to accept. And that's basically the current system that we have. People are forced facts. They're forced to memorize certain things, to repeat it a certain way, to do the process. Let me see your work, draw it out. It's got to be done this way, blah, 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 blah. It's so very, very limiting. It's so very, very limiting. And recognizing the limitations of that is essential in transforming it, and that's what we're moving to. This transitioning, to start to look at the way that we're doing things, the way that we're looking at things, the way that we look at ourselves, and the way that we look at how we develop. It's all it's all got to change, because we've got everything ass backwards right now. Or society, and I'm not talking to the audience.
If we lived in a sustainable circumstance, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I'd be like, I'm fine doing my own thing, and you go ahead and do your thing. But I'm with you. I'm in this position where I'm saying it's not sustainable anymore, and it is time for a change. I'm not gonna pretend that I'm happy with the way government does things, but in a lot of these circumstances, I don't fight the government. I just say, I look to what I'm going to replace it with within myself. Like, how can I, look at what's come about with the rules and the regulations, and I say, what fits, what doesn't. Move on. Let's work with what we can introduce here. I don't, criticize for what has been established in the past. I don't say this is absolutely terrible. The education system is all bad or whatever. I just say let's improve it and let's take it to the next level. and we're going to have to let go of some stuff. And, the letting go is what people are not generally understanding, I think, in this time and age.
Julien, we do have a caller on the line.
Okay.
You want to bring him out? Area code 303.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Julien and Bob. Congratulations on your show.
Thank you. Can I have your name, please?
Yes, my name is Yu. That's spelled Y-O-U. That is my entire legal name, and my nickname is Yuma, Y-O-U-M-A, from Colorado.
Welcome from Colorado. Interesting name. Yu.
Yeah, I made Yu a name 25 years ago, dropped all the others legally, thanked them for their use, and I've been Yu for a long time. And
awesome.
I'm a fan of the collective imagination opt-in, and I've been with you guys since late December, Bob, and the rest every night, every time. I'm totally there with you, and I totally appreciate everything you've done. And Julien, I'm very happy to hear you come on board.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, you. And we
You're
appreciate you. We appreciate your, because I tell you, when we get on the show, there's a lot of energy. We can feel you, and everybody who tunes in, it's such a pleasure, to meet with a group of people who, like I said, don't look at you like you have a third eye, which I do.
Of course.
By the way.
It is, and I've been holding this space for all of us for a long, long, long time, and totally appreciate and understand what's going on. But what I wanted to call in about right now, and what I'm very happy to hear, is this conversation you're having concerning the children and the schooling and the education, because I'll make it quick. My first choice for our three children back in the 80s was to move from Southeast Florida to Framingham, Massachusetts, so that they could attend the Sudbury Valley School. Have either of you heard of the Sudbury education?
No.
Well, Sudbury education is the education for the 21st century, in my understanding. I've known a lot about Waldorf education.
The Waldorf schools, yeah. It's very big in
my
Germany.
3 children actually graduated from the Shining Mountain Waldorf School here in Boulder, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And that was our second choice. The Sudbury, it's spelled S-U-D, S is in Sam, U-D is in dog, B is in boy, U-R-Y, Sudbury Valley School. And their website is fabulous. It's just sudval.org, sudval.org. They've spread all over now. It's it's democratic schooling based on the Summerhill model that A.S. Neal created back in the 50s in England. And it is phenomenal. It's utterly, utterly phenomenal. And the people who founded Sudbury Valley in Framingham, Massachusetts, some of the founders originally are still there on the staff. But we went there, we took the children, and we visited. Well, we couldn't swing it to move there for certain various reasons. Instead, we came to Colorado, which was a very easier thing for us to do. But the Sudbury education model is exactly what we're all wanting and talking about in some ways, except most adults, I'd say 97.75%, are afraid of it, in that it allows the children the freedom to choose how they will spend the time of their day at school in every way, and it's based on democratic running. It's fabulous.
Wow, I'd like to look it up.
Oh my gosh, you'll love it.
Tell me, now,
yes.
Have your kids gone through this schooling? And what age are your children?
My children all went through the Waldorf school because we didn't move to Framingham for the Sudbury school.
Okay.
That was in 87. We went from South Florida to Colorado so that our oldest, who was going into the 4th grade, could enter the 4th grade here at the Shining Mountain Waldorf School. So all 3 of my children, the ages are 35 is the oldest. She's a global visionary artist. And the next one is almost 33. He's an architectural engineer, a green builder, and a sustainable living guy. And then the youngest is going to be 30 next month. And he's a fabulous person with children and all kinds of interesting things. But so that's your answer, is no, they didn't get the Sudbury education, but they've grown up in a family with a mom who's passionate about it, and they know about it. And it totally, wait until you connect with this when you do. And any of your listeners who hear this, just go to sudval.org or Google Sudbury Education. Daniel and Hannah Greenberg were the two original founders with Mimsy Sadovsky and a few others. They're prolific writers. They have so much to read on the website. They do featured articles every month. There's one here in Wheat Ridge, Colorado that my cousin's 11-year-old son will soon begin attending in September. There are no grades, no classes unless the kids decide they want a class. There's no testing. They do not keep records on the children. They have a school meeting that is really what runs the school. Everyone has a vote, including the staff, one vote. The ages are from 4 years to 19. And the conversations and the free-flowingness of everything is what makes this work. It's total respect and honor and freedom.
That sounds wonderful. I want to go there.
Yeah.
I know. It's been going on for 45, 46 years now, and there are schools around the country and the world. I'm so passionate about it.
I'm wondering what it would take to establish this in other locales and start spreading this type of form of education.
Well, that's the question, Julien. I mean, I have flyers that I put up here in Boulder, and I have car magnetic door signs on my car that says, making connections. And now for something completely different. Rendezvous Sudbury Schools, and then my contact information. And so that's the way people have gotten together to get these schools going, is to have study groups. And you can do this by getting in touch with the Sudbury Valley School, and they even have a packet for people to study and so forth. It takes what? It takes a desire, and to look at something that is totally different than the pattern. There's a great book that was co-authored by Daniel Greenberg and Russell Ackoff, and it's called Turning Learning Right Side Up. It's a hardback, and it's a probably $25 book, but it's really very definitive in exploring many good things, of course, and including the Sudbury education model. But the best book is called Free at Last, and people can obtain this book, and I recommend that be the first introduction, really, and they can get it from the Sudbury Valley School publications.
I think in this time and age, parents who are very open-minded about, letting their children develop how they wish, often find themselves in probably more of like a homeschooling circumstance where they just don't see their kids going to, the public schools and whatnot. And I know a couple homeschooling parents and what their opinions are. Even so, with homeschooling, if you want to get degrees and whatnot, you still have to, pass the tests that are presented by the state and whatnot. But, how they spend their time in each day is a lot more fluid and works, generally by how the parents are willing to take it or something like that. I haven't homeschooled my children, but I've had some good friends who've spoken to the value of that. But homeschooling could also be a new kind of shackle a parent can have over their children too. So I'm not, completely advocating homeschooling either.
Right. It can go either way, and And one of the beauties of having a community such as a Sudbury school or Waldorf school is to have a community and where the children can be socially involved.
Right, and that's an argument against homeschooling, right? Is they don't develop social skills as as quickly and as simply and easily as those that are in public settings.
Yeah, that's one reason. What has been found, and anybody who wants to go read and learn about the Sudbury model will do it on their own. They'll just be totally inspired to go find it out, is that it's putting children all together along with very tuned in, tapped in adults, and giving them the freedom and the space to choose how they want to spend their day. And they've discovered and found over 46 years now, and other new schools that have come up in the last 20 years or so, Sudbury schools, it's through the conversations that they have with each other and the being together, all these age groups, that's phenomenal. It's just beautiful. And I've interviewed some of the people and some graduates up at the Sudbury School years past when I was really excited about wanting to start one of these here in Colorado. It's just beautiful to read. There are CDs, there are DVDs, there are books. I mean, there's so much to learn from, to see what has happened to these students as they have gone out into the community. They're magnificent.
Well,
so I'll let you guys
sharing.
go.
Yeah, definitely. That is amazing. And I've never heard of Sudbury. Very familiar with Waldorf schools, which is also, a much better way of education than the traditional schools. But I will definitely look into Sudbury. I put the link there in the chat room for any of you who are looking.
Sudbury, yeah, sudval.org. And Waldorf. I mean, I'm a Waldorf alumni parent, and I've been through the system for 20 years. And it is fabulous. It's great, but it's still not giving them that total respect and freedom.
Right.
But it is.
I'm hoping society in general will go back to the roots and understand that they can, grow through the type of school that you're speaking to. Like for myself, I would like to have that experience. I don't want to say I've lost my opportunity because, I'm an adult at this point. I'm thinking societies in general can benefit from having spaces like this.
Of course.
Democratic learning universities and whatnot.
Yes, and that book by Akoff and Daniel Greenberg, it's a good book. It's a very good book for thinking academics and even parents to read, to give them a good history of where education has come from and how the Rockefellers helped create this whole binding thing with robotic schools in public education. So it's good for the parents. They have to actually get a grounding, the adults do, in order to gain the trust, and they have to have a spiritual connection too, to themselves, to know that their children are curious by nature and they will learn everything they have to learn to be successful and contributing members of the society, and this is proven out in the Sudbury schools. Totally.
Well, thank you again, for bringing that to our attention. And
you're welcome.
I think I might look into that, soon enough.
Yeah, and you're welcome to get in touch with me anytime. I'm in Boulder, and how do you do it? Just you and I are one at Gmail, YOUNIRONE at Gmail. That's how you can reach me if you ever want to be involved in a conversation.
I just want to check. I'm getting some Skype messages saying that some people cannot hear us and that they lost what they can hear up to this point, even where the email was given. So you just refresh their connection to Blog Talk Radio or the browser.
Yeah, just they refresh. They should be able to hear again.
Okay, I'm just going to type that in. Try to refresh. I've got a question in the chat room regarding will we see ETs next month? And let me preface, I guess, with the answer because some people may not know that I've asked myself to have connection with any types of ET groups that are willing to speak with me. And I did get an answer from a Pleiadian group, observation group. And this is some time past, it's a couple months now. And those who have listened to my material online have, probably already come across this. And so I know that people would want to have some of their questions answered regarding my connection to those. And this is probably going to be the first one, but I'm going to preface it by saying that, everyone has the ability to connect with them. And that can be on a physical level, that can be on a subconscious level, that can be in our dreams, and that can be in our mind in our waking state. But you're going to find that it comes down to you'll have to establish a space where you can have that contact, and you'll find so many different blockages typically that will make it difficult for you to reconcile the opportunity for you to have these connections. So I'm going to say for each person, it's a personal decision to actually have them invited into your life. And as a collective for the planet, it really does come to a position where what is the consensus? Like as a consensus, are we interested in having them, come land here? And so at this point, when it comes to the question directly of are they going to show up next month, I can only speak to what their consensus is relative to our consensus, because they have a consensus space of thought that that reflects their telepathic communication amongst each other within their sphere of reality, which is their position in orbit and around our solar system and nearby. And they are not seeing that they are at the same place that we're at, as in they're actually more ready than we are for them to have first contact. They've been ready for a long time, but more and more they're finding greater comfort with the opportunity to have what might seem to be worldwide first contact. At this time, it seems the safest thing to do is to just have UFO sightings and try to gather momentum in worldwide discussions on their presence, because it is a very interesting subject, and until it sort of breaks through into the locker room speak or the the water cooler speak, it hasn't really developed a level of consensus that is where they're at. I mean, that's half of what they spend their day about is talking about when they can come see us. So there's many conversations going on their end, but on our end, are we quite at that stage where we're willing to invite them in our front door? And, they're looking for that. So when it comes to, if I have a prediction about next month, I can just look at the trends, sort of like an internal bar graph of how the energy has been up to this point. And I can say there is a likelihood, but I'm going to lean towards that progress being somewhere more in late August. It's not a promise, but all I can say is that if I'm looking at the curve, sort of the graph chart in my head of awareness and thought and experience and discussion that will lead to grand and formal invitation for them to find themselves here on the planet, not just in our skies. It's probably going to be somewhere, not next month, but some point after that. Anyhow, I hope that's a good enough explanation just from where I'm coming from, which is all I can really do. I can't speak for them on their behalf, even though they can, let me hear in on some information they have. It really comes down to, how do I feel about it, and that's all I can really offer. Bob? Are we still?
I was muted.
Okay.
The only thing I can say to that is that in that realm, dates really don't work so well. Time doesn't work the same way because they have access to all time. And so things tend to be more event-driven than scheduled, on this date or on this time. That's a very linear 3D type of thing where time is so very, very important. I can say that the impression that I get when I connect is this year.
I'm going to say definitely this year.
This year, for sure.
Definitely this year.
But whenever I question as far as time or specific dates or periods of time, the information, that doesn't really work.
I'm beginning more and more to see time as a moment to moment, like one moment leads the next.
Right.
Step by step, sort of like if you want to get to the second floor and there's stairs to go from here to there. Well, you would think that you would just glide over each step because you're familiar with how to walk up a stair. But when we're talking about new frontier, we're talking about, like a baby who's crawling who doesn't know how necessarily to take each step up the stairs. Like, we don't know exactly what the next best step is. They don't know exactly what the next best step is. We can only make assumptions. And so, when it comes to new frontiers, we can only really observe what we're focusing on, which is our current step. Like, what step are we moving up the staircase? And at this point, if I can give sort of like a bar chart, reality check of how things have progressed, in the past 10 years, let's just say we're going to like a 10-story building, and at the top of the 10th floor, we're meeting and shaking hands and sharing, croissants or something. We're on, I want to say, just about to reach the 9th floor. And that's where we've come. And at the beginning of the year, I want to say only 6 months ago perhaps, we were somewhere in the 6th floor. So if you can understand 10 years and only 6 months ago, how we've covered a lot more ground in the last 6 months relative in terms of speed than we have in the last 10 years, it's been really fast. Like, we've covered several floors now, more than 3 floors in just about 6 months or so. So we're almost at the 9th floor, or we're just cresting the 9th floor, and 10th floor would be some point in our future, of course, with regards to,
One thing I do get very clearly, there are many individuals and many who are listening right now who have been seeing them in the sky, and they've been winking at you. There are many individuals who are ready, mentally, and they're ready to make that contact. And on an individual basis, that may be possible if you create the space for them.
Actually, that's already happening. Within the room that I'm a part of on Skype, the Cosmic Room, it's unbelievable how many people have already had sighting contact, and multiple sighting contacts. And it really comes from having the intent. Because although we live in a consensus reality and society, take note of your authority over what you experience, and you can make it so much more easily and more quickly on your own behalf, if that's what you look for. So we share that in that room, and we get each other excited about that, and break down the limitations that we've felt that were in place. Because really, they're ready. It's really us being ready. And, between you and me, am I ready? I don't know yet. I'm not 100% clear on that for myself even. So,
we do have another caller on the line.
Okay.
Area code 267.
Hello.
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 Hello. Hey,
can you move closer to your microphone a little?
I'm on a telephone. I got it.
Oh, there you go. Now it's better.
My name is Andrew. I'm from Philadelphia area.
Hi, Andrew.
Hello, Andrew.
How you guys doing? First, I want to thank you guys both for everything that you've been doing, especially first Bob with all of the One People stuff. I've been listening for quite some time, and I appreciate everything you brought to the table with that, and Julien as well more recently with I think we need more people, not necessarily more people, but more access to the type of information that Julien is bringing forward. Because there's people like me who are 31 who are still on the younger side, who know that there's plenty wrong and plenty that doesn't add up, but have a hard time finding their way to things that are worth holding on to as we move forward. And that kind of leads me into what I have to say about what you were just. I didn't hear the first hour of the show, but you were just talking about the plating group you were speaking with, and kind of what the consensus among the different groups that are out there is that, they're ready for contact, but they don't see that we're necessarily ready. And I definitely, in your last update, Julien, that was posted on the opt-in site, I sensed in your voice kind of there, maybe you had a little bit of a wall in your excitement for how quickly things were going to happen. I think you made a comment, if you're waiting for more people like myself to come forward, then I think you're going to be disappointed. Something like that. And I think that what we need now more than anything is, because I don't think anybody has a clue as to what things are going to look like a month from now or certainly a year from now. And I think whoever has a good idea of what this world could look like should step forward with that. And I don't care if you're from the Bronx or Andromeda. Really, I don't. Because there are so many differing agendas and points of view and levels of awareness on this planet. We need some kind of event that will at least get us all looking in one direction so that we can then start to formulate, a coherent idea of what we want. Because right now, most people don't have a clue as to what's going on. So if you wanted to speak to that, is there any chance that they're going to present themselves in a, mass way, or are they going to literally sit back until we, the people, literally control this planet and invite them?
So what I've gotten recently is that they are doing the biggest ramping up of sightings that they believe they've ever done. And they're continuing this on a day-by-day basis. They're doing it not entirely differently than they've done in the past. They're just doing more. And so what I've expected is that there should be more sightings, just more sightings. And those who want to invite personal sightings should prepare themselves with, material to share that data, cameras, zoom lenses and whatnot to get really good material. And then maybe, we can see some of that, flooding a little bit more, and actually just looking for like a flood of that. Even though it seems to have been not very effective, there's a point where it's not deniable. And so despite, whether it's reported or not, they're going to continue to ramp up purported sightings to the point where everyone and their mother should either have seen one or know someone that has seen one, within these next 2 months. I want to say May and June. That's really the intent. And that's as much as they're willing to, as a consensus, be willing to interfere, what they call interfering. Because what we have living on Earth is a co-reality with the Earth, with Gaia. And they don't have a arrangement with Gaia. They have a certain arrangement, but they don't have the one that we have. So if we could speak to Gaia being our house, it's kind of like asking someone to be invited to our house. But the majority or the consensus within people living on the house is that we don't even know that they're outside yet. So to even speak about shaking hands with the person outside, it still got to, we still need to get people to the windows to see that there's someone outside wanting to come and visit. So we're still expanding in that arena.
They're okay with the idea that we'll just make sure everyone's aware, and we know we can't control the information in the short term, so whatever way that gets spun, we'll wait it out, so to speak, showing that we're not, malicious in any way, and ultimately through grassroots, the word will get out about what they are about.
Correct. And as you may be hearing, there's attempts at, New World War type things. And to some extent, I don't want to speak to this the wrong way, but they would love for a chance for everyone to see a missile being tossed in the air and them sort of removing it in front of our eyes. And that apparently has happened, but not covered. Like there's actually been ballistic attempts that they've, shut down. So if that can be captured, not that they want to invite this, be very clear, they do not want to invite even an attempt for a ballistic attempt. But, they've done things where they can turn off, equipment such as, automatic rifles and whatnot within a firefight circumstance. And then people are left wondering, how is it that, they can't shoot at each other and everyone's triggers are broken or something. And they do these sorts of things, but of course that gets, hidden. And they're trying to do more things that the media has less control over, and that's, more public appearances. Because right now, actual showing up, an individual, a face on mainstream is not agreed upon, and it's not even close to being agreed upon at this stage. I'm sad to say. I'm okay with it, and I would be interested in seeing Pleiadians show up on my television, but it turns out that the consensus of humanity on the planet is not ready for that. And if it shows up on the television, it's as good as being on everybody's television because it spreads so quickly.
Right. So they're not gonna beam up Anderson Cooper with his camera crew and ask him to start recording. That would certainly get the message out.
That can happen. But you know whose choice that is, right? It's Anderson Cooper's choice to do so. And if he moves based on what everyone asks him to do, if he is actually, speaking for the people, then the people should tell Anderson Cooper to ask for that.
There is also one thing one misconception that I want to address, and I don't want to mean to rub anyone the wrong way, but a lot of people, they look at our galactic cousins and our galactic friends as though that they have all the answers, that we don't have, and they have access to data. And in a lot of cases, that's true. But the reality of the situation is we're the ones who have come down on probably one of the most precarious missions in the universe. You understand? Being here on Earth is an honor. You are you yourself as a human being here on Earth are experiencing something many of the galactics have never experienced. Not at the level that you're experiencing it. I would say most of the galactics have not experienced. The ones who get to experience this Earth experience really are the masters, the avant-garde, fearless, courageous ones who have actually come down here. So a lot of what's happening here is reflected there. You're at the ground floor, so to speak, okay? So the idea that, they're higher or more, or they have more access, or they're more spiritually evolved is not true. It just isn't. And a lot of times, people think that that they're going to come and they're going to save us, or they're going to, and really, they're waiting for us, because we're the ones that operate here. A lot of them can't even operate in this reality. Right. Okay? So we're the ones that are operating here in this reality, and we're the ones basically that have to do the physical work and fixing it. And that's what we're doing. A lot of there has never been a time, and somebody quoted this, but it's never been said more true. There has never been a time in history where the fate of the entire planet rests on the shoulders of so few. Those who are awake on Earth, one awakened human being is equivalent to at least 100,000 sleeping ones.
It's actually 70,000.
Getting closer to 100.
Okay.
We won't. It's worth a lot.
Oh yeah.
So you have a relatively small number of awakened human souls who are literally directing the fate of this whole planet. And that's why it's very, very important for us to hold that light. Okay? And because the majority, population-wise, energetic-wise, we've already reached critical mass. But that is the result of, population-wise, a small group of people. Relatively small group of people. So when you have mass sightings, you've got a very, very large population-wise of sleeping people, right, that are literally going to be shocked. Their reality is going to be shocked. For those who are listening, those who are tuning in, you're part of a small group that has a lot of influence. If you can understand that. So when you're talking about events like this, although energetically we've crossed a lot of markers, the population in mass has not. So there's a lot of work that's being done to awaken people, because if someone is not ready for their reality to be changed or their reality to be rocked, there is no external event that's going to convince them. I mean, they can convince themselves that it's the government, and it's all, even if it stares at them in the face. In order to make real change in a person, it's got to come internally. And so that internal awakening process, right, is something that has to do with their consciousness, which is tied into the magnetic grid of Earth, which is tied into the solar grid, and it's tied ultimately to the central universe. What's been happening is that frequency has been amped up quite a bit. So people who are resting in that old reality are becoming very, very uncomfortable right now. A lot of them are starting to stir, asking questions, and opening themselves up to. And now there's a lot of external events that could assist in that, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, is what I'm saying, for a big portion of the population. And as that work is being done, you're going to see more and more things become readily available in mass. But individually, you have access to all of it. You have access to E-key contact. You have access to absolute data. You have access to telepathy. There's so much available to individuals right now that you can literally tap into and gain access to on an individual basis. But in mass, when is that going to? It's going to happen soon. Obviously, because you're not going to have a bunch of people running around doing miraculous things without others noticing. And that is happening right now. I mean, there are people out there right now that are capable of doing amazing things that would afford to be considered impossible or godly. And that is going to increase. So I would say focus on yourself, not in an unselfish way, but your focus really should be on your own development, what you are putting out there, what you are creating. Your focus shouldn't be on how are we going to wake everybody. It's not necessarily your job to wake anyone up. Your awakening and your doing is what's going to wake them up.
Mm.
Just by being
Julien?
awake. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was going to say thanks for letting me talk to you guys for so long. I was going to ask one last question related to that, and then I was going to jump off and listen to you guys. So thank you. In related to that, great points there, Bob, and I agree. And I just think that the ET sightings are a nice catalyzing event. I don't expect them to come down and fix the hole in my roof. I don't want that either. But right in that vein of what you were just speaking about, Bob and Julien, was what you've actually pointed me in the direction of Michael Monk and his website, and I've actually subscribed to that.
Wonderful.
And what's been your experience, and if you had any quick pointers, Julien, about getting in touch with the energy around you? And I'm going to listen. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Well, that's part of the transitioning as well, is developing greater sensitivity to what you have more access to within yourself. And there's many different paths that can lead down to many different quote-unquote skills you can develop. Oftentimes the idea of meditation is used simply to quiet down the subconscious, which can be seen as the grounding that you've established from your life outside of your mind, as in from others and from your surroundings. And, these work, and they're not, spectacular in terms of brand new ideas. They're old, tried and true ways of doing this. But on an individual basis, as in my individual development, it came down to understanding, a little bit more scientifically even, how reality functions, and then realizing that reality is quite flexible, and then also understanding exactly how much influence I had over it, and then more and more trusting the results, and going through the trusting of the results, discovering more and more what I can do with my own reality and how much more control I have, and on a day-by-day basis, came to the point in confidence about almost everything. And so now I really feel myself in a limitless space of, the sky's the limit, and playing in that sort of frame of reference.
For me, it started with, first off, physically. Being in tune with my own physical body. Paying attention to the sensations in my body, to my skin, my breathing, the blood going through my body, the subtle sensations. And then expanding that outward so that I could feel the couch, or the floor that I'm on, or feel the walls around me, the environment, I expand my senses so that it encompasses not just my own person, but I could feel the texture of the soda can, on the table, in front of me. I could feel the texture of the walls and the ceilings, and expand it out. I could feel the house and the grass, the foundation. I could feel, the trees, and you just expand your senses outward until you can expand it as great or as small as you want. You can even go internally, but you start to get a sense of you being your environment. And there's no separation between you and your environment that, it's like being in a dream. When you're in a dream, right, if you ever have experienced lucid dreaming, okay, where you're physically aware that you're dreaming, and when you're in that state, you are aware that, hey, I'm dreaming, and I'm creating all of this. This is all coming from me. You know that you are in a world of your own making. Your understanding, and that point is all the people that I meet, I'm creating. Yes, you can interact with them. Yes, but it's all coming from you. When you take that understanding and bring it into your real life, you are right smack on the money where you need to be, because that's what you're in. You are in the same reality as your dreams. It's all coming from you. Everything that you see is a creation of yours. You know, when you look around and you see, you know, don't see it as separate from you. You know, that the sun is you. It's shining back at you. You're creating all of it. And when you have that understanding, and even in a lucid dream, then you start to take control of the dream. You can take control of your reality, you know, and this show will start to discuss some of the tools and mechanisms that we found effective, and hopefully others will share their methods, because there's no set one way of doing it. Because, like I said, everybody's experiencing things different. You learn differently. Some people are visual. Some people are audio. Some people are experiential in their learning. You know, just because your experience isn't the same as someone else's experience doesn't mean that it's not working for you. You've got to get in touch with yourself, your way of feeling, being, and doing, and interpreting reality, in order to take control of mastering reality.
And some people have a greater focus on different physical senses. Like some are very visual, some are very auditory, some, you know, use their thoughts and are able to recognize telepathic information separate from what might be considered their brain. And some work with the subtlety of the feeling sense, you know, with the nerves on your skin and in your hands. And
or even, like, you know, the animals. Animals smell more than just things. Animals can smell a radio signal. The cell tower, a dog can smell the energy coming from a cell tower. You know, because they're interpreting energy, a lot of their interpretation of energy is through their nose. You know, you can train yourself to smell colors. You may not believe it, but you can. You know, and I started, you know, imagine, what does purple feel like? What does purple taste like to you? These kinds of questions are really, really great. You know, when you start looking at your reality, why am I seeing this color? Could it be another color? And you'll find that you can change it. And when you start to be able to change the colors that you see, and you start to get wow, yeah, I could see the greens, I could see the blues in that white, I could see so many other colors. You know, you'll start to realize that your reality presents itself in a way that you expect it to, or that you are comfortable with. And when you can start to get comfortable with things that you were before uncomfortable with, then you'll start experiencing more. You'll start seeing more.
More easily to you. One of the things I wanted to sort of share that helped me was actually my diet, to some small degree, not a very large degree. But I found that adjusting my diet really did help, because I found a lot of food actually gets grounded in you. So if you have something that you reflect upon within the food that you're not comfortable with, you know, some people might just say meat protein, for instance, and you don't want to ground what the experience of what that meat has gone through, and you don't want to ground it within your body, well, you know, then you can avoid that, and you can substitute. And what you'll find is vegetables and fruits, especially very colorful ones, have, you know, what might seem a lighter experience, and they can, you know, raise a degree of your sensitivity to lighter energies. If you want greater sensitivity to denser energies, well, then by all means go ahead and eat meat. But a lot of awareness usually comes from the lighter realms before the more denser realms.
And once you get really good at it, you'll see that you can release the emotional trauma of the meat before you eat it.
Yeah, I eat meat. Just so you know, I'm not a vegetarian.
You know, you can physically release all of any negative aspects, and then show, there's something about the energy of appreciation and gratitude that is extremely transformational. Once you start to sense energy patterns, when someone shows gratitude and appreciation, it instantly changes everything. It just change. I don't know how to explain it, Julien.
I had an example once where everyone generally admires flowers, right? And someone was asking me, I think it was, if a flower had feelings, if they can sense us and our interaction with them, and they absolutely do.
Absolutely.
All energy that rests in form and non-form wants to find a place of belonging. It wants to be in the flow.
Perfect. Yes.
So when it comes to food, if it's in the flow and you are giving this level of gratitude to it, it can't wait to get into your mouth.
Exactly. Thank you, Julien. You explained it. Yes. It wants to feel like it belongs. It wants to feel just like you do. You want to feel appreciated. You want to feel that you have a place, that you make a difference. You want to feel that feeling of fulfillment. That's what really brings happiness to people. It's not the amount of money that you make. If there's no fulfillment in your job, no matter how much money you're making, you're not going to be happy. You're going to be miserable. But when you have that sense of, yes, I'm making a difference, what I do is appreciated, I belong, I have, and all consciousness is like that. You're no different. It starts, my level of awareness started, when I was younger. I would see how, some certain people would treat their animals, but I always treated my pets like they were people. If I didn't like it, I can't expect the animal to like it, because they're just like you. And I love your name, because you remind everybody when when they call you that you are them, or that they are you. And everything is like that. We share a common consciousness. And so when you appreciate, when you look at that flower and you smell and you're like, oh, I'll tell you, that flower is elated. It's elated.
It's crazy. That's actually a practice in Michael Monk's course, and man, I tell you, the first time I did that, flowers took on a whole new meaning. But it's not just with flowers; it's like with all things around you. It's also, gave me a new understanding and experience of landfills. It's like one of the most greatest tragedies is to be discarded and have no way to feel belonging,
Julien, we do have a couple more callers, and we're down to our last 10 minutes. So let's see if we can get through our next couple callers so we can get their questions answered. Area code 814.
Hello?
Area code 814. We can hear you. Are you there?
Yeah,
And can I have your name?
Yeah, my name is Craig.
Hello, Craig.
Oh.
How can we help you?
Oh, well, I just thought I've been listening to the show, and so I just you've given me like a few ideas and whatnot. But I guess from what you were saying, that everyone is different, and I was thinking about that too. How everyone resonates at a different frequency. Everyone is unique, so what they have access to, different parts of the universe and whatnot, because everyone is different. But anyway, one of the things that I was wondering, because I've been kind of listening to Julien's stuff, and so he apparently has a different access to things that I don't. So one of the things that I was wondering is that, I would like to see if these Star Brothers or whatever, if they can help me realize my own potential. And that's one of the things that I've been asking is, can they help me to realize my own potential? Because I remember a story about about how we are like the elephant, that when the elephants were, where they train elephants is they tie it when they're young, the babies, they have a chain around them. And so the elephant thinks that he's tied to this chain, and eventually when they get bigger, they can just use a rope. And the elephants will still think that they're being, that they're being held by this big chain when all it is just a little rope. So I feel that we're kind of like that. I feel like I am an elephant that's been trained to think it's a mouse. I actually believe that I'm a mouse, but in reality I'm this elephant. I have this great power, but I just think that I'm a mouse. So I'm wondering, I'm supposing that these Star brothers and sisters are more advanced than me, and they probably know our potential, whereas I don't.
I want to speak. So they have a perspective. If you can grow up in a society where you never are, and you are reflected upon as being the elephant of energy and power that you are, they don't actually have a lot of experience with the transitioning to that. All they can be is that. So it's actually us here on the earth that are going through the transition, especially these people in the forefront, because then we can help others go through that experience. So, you can find all sorts of people who have gone through their development phases and development experiences, and you can gain trust from their experiences and reflect on how that fits in with what you've gone through. And so that's kind of how it works. I don't want to say the ETs have necessary guidance. They will just speak to who they are mostly.
And another thing is, please, and I tried to point this out earlier, Craig, do not assume that they are more advanced than you. They're not. They have less. They have less to deal with in terms, of density is concerned, of energy. They're not encumbered as much as we are. In other words, like if you're carrying around a 200-pound knapsack on your back, you are not going to move as freely as someone who's got nothing but their T-shirt on. Okay, so they're not. So that doesn't necessarily mean.
And that brings to my mind two sources that one of them is a book called The Key that explains how we are one of the densest matters in creation.
Right. So,
and then there was there's another source too. It's a Mormon source called from the Pearl of Great Price, which says that where purportedly this character Enoch, talks to God, and he's told that this is one of the most evil creations that's ever been created. Of all of his creations, there hasn't been as much evil as this particular world. So that just when you said that, it brought those two sources came to my mind.
So what I'm saying to you is, just because you're currently not able to run as fast as they are running, maybe if you took the knapsack off, you would find that you're right on par with where they are, and that's what we were talking about earlier. I don't know if you heard the first part of the show about the releasing of a lot of the limitations.
Yeah, I missed the first part of the show, so I'll have to go back and listen to it once it gets released. I'll have to go back and listen to the beginning of it. But yeah, that was the main thing. I was just wondering if they could help in that, in that aspect, because I presume that they're more advanced and know that. But
they may, but in fact, you're going to find out that you're more skilled at it than they are in a lot of cases.
That's what I'm trying to tell you, Craig.
Oh, okay. Because I'm just starting to realize that. I'm starting to realize that I'm like this elephant. I'm being told how to move. I think I'm a mouse, so I'm being guided like a mouse. But when I move, I actually have the power of the elephant behind me. That when I rebel against what I'm being told and do what I want to do, all of a sudden the forces around me are doing things that I never, and I'm wondering how, I'm starting to realize that I'm the one who's making this happen without even knowing it, just because I choose to live to be as I want to be and do as I want, and then rebel against what I'm told, and all of a sudden these miraculous things happen. I'm wondering, well, how did this happen? I'm starting to realize that I've been misinformed, so I still think I'm a mouse, but somehow, subconsciously, I know that I'm not. I know that I'm an elephant.
Help,
and
Craig,
I'm trying to learn that.
Craig, I hate to cut you off because we're down to our last minute and a half. We're going to continue. We have 2 more callers. We could go over a little bit, but for those of you who are listening to us live, it may drop off. But for those of you who have called in, you can continue to listen, and we'll get to the last 2 questions before we actually end the call. So those who are in the chat room, you may not hear. Area code 832. We'll get to you right afterwards. So if we go over, we're still here. You can listen to the archive and catch the last bit, the last few minutes. And please tune in next week at the same time, and we will continue our conversation. So go on. Continue, Craig, now that I got that out of the way.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I don't want to hog up all the time, but that was basically my question.
What I would say to you, Craig, is that the first step is, number 1, understand you are God. There is really no limitation that you have other than the ones that you place upon yourself. Okay? You may not be experiencing that right now, but understand that as your premise. That you are God, and you really have no limitations other than the one that you agree to or that you place upon yourself. Once you start from that premise, start slowly releasing, and start with small things. Set small intentions for yourself, right? And prove to yourself that you are the elephant. And that means testing the boundaries. And that takes courage, that takes effort, test the boundaries. And we're gonna get into a lot of different ways that you can do that, and test your boundaries, and so that you can see and experience your own influence and your own power. Because, like I said, nothing from the outside is really going to help you. It's got to come from within. So it's a matter of getting confident in yourself. And
no one can deliver confidence to you. Your confidence is what you own.
Yeah, I believe that. In fact, I was thinking, that you can't really expect, people from other planets to come to. I mean, this is our reality. This is our time. It's our world. It's our adventure, our experience. You can't really ask, in all fairness, can't ask somebody to live it for you or do it for you. We have to live this, and then apparently we need to share this experience with others, or with others, people in the universe who want to share this experience via us, if we can, are able to open up and become transparent for them to be able to do that,
Right,
but,
because if they were to come, if they were to come or experience with us, they just would be too uncomfortable with the limitations of that. You see, and it's just not in their nature to place the kind of limits on their activities as we do on ours. So can you see that, and then how in their environment they have a hard time speaking to how to remove those limitations? Because our environment is one of the densest, harshest environments in existence.
Right. One of the most difficult. And so what you're saying, I see what you're saying is they don't experience that type of reality. We do. It's, I guess
it's like asking an Eskimo, advice on what you should wear at the beach.
I like that.
Right. Well, yeah. No, actually, what you've been saying makes sense, though. I mean, I guess it's something that we're just going to have to learn ourselves. I'm becoming aware that I am not this mouse. Except the problem is that I'm like hypnotized or somehow to where my conscious mind still thinks that,
Right.
But I'm starting to awaken. I'm putting two and two together. I realize, you know what? How come when I did this, when I did these actions and just lived the way that I want to, even though I believed that negative would come out of it, instead I did what I wanted to do, and instead of following the way I should have, a miracle happened, and miracles started to happen. So I'm starting to realize that when I'm moving, even though I still believe I'm a mouse consciously, I'm an elephant, because when I move, these miracles happen. So there's something else. I'm starting to realize, and I'm trying to get rid of, I'm trying to learn, I guess, and I guess we have to kind of, like you said, I guess we have to do it ourselves, because our environment, nobody else knows the environment better than we do. So I guess it's something that we have to learn ourselves. Because who are you gonna like? Yeah, I mean,
for the most part, what I get sometimes is I get them cheerleading in my head. They're like, go for it. They're like on the sidelines acting like cheerleaders. It's kind of cute and fun and gives me these little boosts of confidence and love. But it's really your journey, and you're really the master of it.
Yeah. Well, I wish I could see through your eyes, because I don't get to see that type of experience, or
if that's what you want, then just know that you can attract the kinds of experiences I'm having. Because for me, it was like I said, that's it. I want to know. I really made more like a statement demand that this is what was going to happen next for me, and it just came because I made it so.
Right. I believe that anything is possible, but I also believe that each person has different abilities, or in other words, the being, or the essence of their being, they have different. It's just like everything has its own vibration and stuff. Actually, I've been listening to you, and I've been going outside, and I'm into permaculture and stuff like that, and I'm into, so I go outside and I work, and all of a sudden I remember some of the things that you said about, energy coming from everywhere, and I was realizing what he said, Julien said there's energy out. And these little plants, then I started thinking, each little rock, each little plant, it all has its own vibration, and it opens up, because of that, it resonates, and the portals that can open up to parts of the universe or anywhere that vibrates with that same resonance. So I started realizing that, and I started trying to pick up on these vibrations, So that's one of the things that I've been experimenting with, but
it sounds like you're doing well. It sounds like you're progressing quite quickly, actually.
And the more you Craig, I would know what I would suggest for you. And I'm kind of tuning in to you right now. So what I would suggest for you is play. Don't be too serious about it, Craig. This is have fun. Play games. And one of the, that playful, that playfulness, it's a completely liberating energy, because it allows for so much, when you're having fun, it allows for so much to be possible. I would say relax, relaxing yourself, be kind to yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself, and don't be so structured and serious about your intention. You want to be focused, but you want to have fun. So, play games, with programming your reality. Play games with, setting your intention. Make it light and make it fun, and you will start to experience more results than when when you try to force things, and that energy doesn't really work so well. It's a more lighter, playful energy about it, and if you're having a good time and it's not so serious, you'll see a lot more experiential results.
Yeah, more spontaneous. Well,
Yes.
I tend to be a more serious person anyway because that's my personality. Whereas my wife, like, she laughs and everything's playful, but she never takes stuff serious enough that she never meditates or focuses enough. So I guess
Well, then you're with the
parallels.
exact right person then.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You could learn from her.
and
right,
she's with the exact right person as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's why we're together, because I always tell people, like, I'm the serious one. I don't talk very much, and she just yaks. So I always say, well, she talks enough for both of us. That's why. Because they say, well, how come you're so quiet? I say, well, she does enough talking for both of us. So it's kind of like, I guess the two personalities complement each other. But she needs to. I mean, she laughs and plays, but she also needs to take serious enough to meditate, because she doesn't meditate. She doesn't focus. She's just all play and no focus. So I guess there has to be a balance. But you're definitely picked up right. I mean, I need to be more playful. I tend to be too serious. So it's not good to be one way. It's lean too far either.
Mhm.
Well, Craig.
But anyway, so I was just thinking about that. Each person is different, and so therefore, what I'm able to pick up on is going to be different than what you are able to pick up on. But I believe that we can see through that other person. In other words, like I'm able to see things through my wife, because I kind of looked up this Mayan calendar thing, and I looked at that my direction is toward the south, which means I see things really small. On as far as the day that we were born on, and then she was born on the day that which focuses to the north, which is where everything is really big. And she's always talks about seeing giants and things like that. So I have sometimes, when I focused on looking through her eyes, I was able to see big things, like the big picture of the universe. But normally I only see the very small, tiny parts of the universe is what I see,
Well,
And,
I think we should continue this conversation, and it brings up lots and lots of subjects that I'd like to expand upon, and I think we'll leave it for the next show. We're talking about relationships where we have someone who might seem to be more like your wife and you being on the other end. There's a lot we can talk to there, and I do really want to explore it, but we also have a couple more callers that we're hoping to get through, even though we're past the regular time.
All right. Well, listen, thanks a lot, Bob and Julien. I don't want to hog up all the time, so
well, thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much, and I'm learning a lot. I'm listening to you, and I just want to know that you appreciate it and that you're contributing a lot of awakening, at least for me. And so,
thank
I
you.
just want to thank you for that.
Thank you. And tune back in next week, and we'll continue the conversation.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
We have another caller, area code 832.
Yes.
There you are.
Hello.
Hi, this is Lisa.
Hello, Lisa.
Hi, Bob. Hi, Julien.
Hi.
Hi.
Congratulations on your show. It's been very enjoyable. And I really don't have a question. I know you've got a few more callers and we're already past time. But considering the show name, The Transitioning, and energy and letting go, I just felt like I wanted to interject, from my perspective, a thought on this whole transitioning period, since I've been really wondering how it would really and truly all unfold. And we're here now, and now we're working it out. But forgiveness, I wanted to interject that thought because at least from my perspective, Julien, I'm right there with you, and Bob too, everything is energy. Love is energy. And absolute love, there are no bounds or limits. And for me, I found over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years that working on forgiveness of others, but mainly for myself, actually freed me from a lot of my, limitations, because they are basically self-imposed I guess, are they not? And so I wanted to, in the theme of the show, I was really excited. I've been following the whole OPPT. I've tuned in to you, Julien, lately. Bob, I'm very familiar with you and the whole bunch, and so grateful. And I just wanted to throw this in as a contribution for a thought process, if anybody listens to this afterwards, or to expand on, that in the letting go, which is part of this transitioning for me, forgiveness of others for anything that I may have perceived, and especially and most importantly for me, has been one of the greatest letting goes, and consequently allowing a fluid movement of the energy that I want to seed, to grow, and to expand. And so I just wanted to kind of throw that in here. I've wondered about the transition, the bridge, from a world of limit and lack and duality, right and wrong, left, right, all that kind of stuff, into a oneness consciousness. So I really just kind of wanted to throw that in there and say hello to you guys, and I'm glad you have this show, and really that's about it, and thank you so much.
Thanks for sharing, Lisa. I think the subject of forgiveness is a very valuable, I want to say maybe a tool for releasing energy and seeing it on its way.
Essential.
It's
an essential tool.
Well, I mean the word forgiveness specifically, but that is the process. It is really about reconciling, and it's up to you how you reconcile it. And forgiveness is like a very effective tool for doing things quickly. Some things require a little bit more looking into sometimes. People might not accept forgiveness, and if you want to still be apart without, complete release from someone, you may have some reconciling to do. But it's a very, very, very important and useful tool.
Yeah, and there's so many, connotations of different words. Words in themselves are living. I used forgiveness because that's a word. I was brought up in the Christian tradition, so it's something that's identifiable for me to use as a tool for myself, and I imagine a lot of other people. But absolutely, I just, for me, in my journey, I have found that probably the most difficult thing was to forgive myself, to allow whatever these, which in effect to me was an energetic release of something that didn't serve, something I needed to let go of in order to be able to actually experience an expansiveness of that which is, and sometimes referred to as unconditional love. Heather, I love the way she brought it up, absolute. It's a great word. But nevertheless, I just wanted to introduce that. I know it means different things to different people. Whatever words you want to use, reconciliation, release, it matters not. To me, it is all an energetic frequency. And so if we're in a transition of trying to let go and move into unity, consciousness, of oneness, and acceptance of all beings for who they are and how they want to be, I found it to be a great tool from my perspective. But nevertheless,
No,
I wanted
it
to
is.
say,
And I think it deserves a lot of elaboration and exploration of all the different ways that we know how to forgive, and maybe some that we might not. So, I thank you for bringing that up. I'd like to put it on the agenda for next week, Bob. Let's try to keep that list too. But
definitely. That's a subject that we can talk a lot about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, guys. I love you all. You're wonderful. I'm very happy for your new program, and much love to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you for calling.
Okay. Bye bye.
And at that, Julien, I think we're going to end it. I'm sorry, caller 212, we didn't get to you, but we're already 20 minutes over, and Blog Talk won't allow us to go very much longer. So we're going to have to ask you to call back next week and continue. And for everyone who's listening, thank you for tuning in. Please tune in next week, Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And wherever else in the world you are, you'll have to figure that out for yourselves.
It's actually not the correct
2
time.
p.m. 2 p.m.
2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. 4 and 5 p.m. East Coast Time. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
And tune in next week. We'll be back.
See you guys.
Bye.